Hello, I am Gregor Johann Mendel. I was born in Austria in 1822. My experiments with pea plants led me to some very important conclusions regarding heredity and genetics. From a young age, I had a great love for nature. I often found myself spending hours in the great outdoors. When I was 21, I became a priest at an Augustinian monastery. I spent the next several years studying math and science at the University of Vienna. After finishing my education, I spent 14 years working in the monastery and teaching at the high school. I love plants and being outdoors, so in addition to teaching, I was also put in charge of the monastery garden. As I observed the plants in my garden, I often wondered how plants obtained their characteristics. Have you ever wondered that? At the time, in the 1800s, the prevailing theory of how traits were passed from parent to offspring was called the blending theory of inheritance. The thought was that a trait seen in an offspring was the combination of traits seen in parents. It seemed probable, but I wasn't completely convinced. I wanted some evidence, so I decided I would design experiments to test this theory. I carried out my work in the ordinary garden peas. I chose this organism because they grow fast. They are inexpensive and available to me, and I could plant a lot of them. I knew that the part of the flower produced pollen, which contains the male reproductive cells, sperm, and that part of the flower produced egg cells. During sexual reproduction, the sperm and the egg join in a process called fertilization. Pea flowers are normally self-pollinating, which means that the sperm cells in the pollen fertilize the egg cells in the same flower. The offspring plant would have the same exact characteristics as the single-parent plant. That's like asexual reproduction. These plants are said to be true breeding. True breeding means that their offspring will be identical to them, as will any generation that follows by self-pollination. I had many different groups of true breeding plants. One group always produced yellow seeds, and another group always produced green seeds. I wanted to see what would happen when I joined the gametes from these two different lines of true breeding plants. To do this, I had to prevent self-pollination. I had to cut away the pollen-bearing male parts of the flowers on one plant, then dust pollen from the other plant onto that flower. This process is called cross-pollination. So I cross-pollinated the yellow seeds with the green seed plants, and I waited for the offspring plants to develop their own seeds. I collected the seed pods from the first generation of offspring and have given them to Mrs. Hunt to share with you today. The pods are labeled F1. F stands for filial, which in Latin means son or daughter. Make a prediction for what color of seeds this F1 generation will be. Now, what would the blending theory of inheritance predict? Open your pods and record your observations. All yellow seeds? What are some possible explanations for this data? I was very surprised by my data. I wondered if I would never see any more green seeds from this line of plants. So I decided, let one of these F1 generation plants self-pollinate and see what happens. I would call this next group of offspring F2 generation. Make a prediction for what color you would think these offspring seeds will be. Open your F2 seed pods and record your data. Now that we have yellow and green seeds, what are some possible explanations for this data? In addition to seed color, I studied many traits in pea plants: position of flowers along the stem, height of the plant, color of the seed pod, whether the seeds were smooth or wrinkled, and flower color. I performed thousands and thousands of pea plant crosses and keep careful records of all my data. My years of work led to 3 very important conclusions which you will be learning about. These are the principle of dominant and recessive traits, the law of segregation, and the law of independent assortment. Good luck with your studies of heredity. I'll be here if you need me.